Okay, it's time to merge that solid axle into our Jalopy model Blender file. So I'm going to collapse this, and I'm going to make sure I have the rig rear suspension collection active or selected. And then I'm going to come back into this file we just created. I'm going to select it all and press Control C to copy it to the clipboard. And then come back here and do Control V. Okay. And I think let's turn on our modeled rear suspension. Come into a top view. Let's select our generic thing here, and let's move it down so that it's close. We can come into a side view, and we can move it up so it's close. So somewhere around right there. And let's start aligning things. Before we do that, I think it copied another controller over here, which we don't want, controller 001. So let's delete that. We're going to have to rehook up our subframe to the new or the old controller, which we can go ahead and do. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to select our subframe for the rear here, and I'm going to edit each driver, and I'm going to pick the old controller like that. Edit driver, controller, edit driver, the controller, edit driver, controller, and I think I just have one more, edit driver, controller. So I think I got all of them. No error, no error, no error, no error, and no error. Okay, so we should have everything hooked up now. Let's pick this sphere for the upright or the wheel assembly. Let's move it in. It's about right there, so that's centered. And then we can just scale the wheel directly if we want. So maybe about right there. That looks good. And really, the rest of this looks good enough. So the rear suspension is quite a bit easier. But we don't want steering, so let's go ahead and I'm going to select this alignment sphere and then press Control ++ to select all its children and grandchildren, and I'm going to press delete. Just get rid of that. Since we don't have steering, we need to change this axle. I'm going to move it in some to right there. We don't need a steering axle, so we need to change it from a hinge to a fixed constraint, like that. And I think the rest of that looks good. I'm going to move our shock so that it's on top of the leaf spring here. Maybe a little bit back to right there. And maybe a little bit down to right there. I think that'll be fine. And I think that looks good. So I'm going to save it. And actually, I didn't do this. We need to actually align. We need to align our wheel assembly to this tire. So we need to recalculate the origin. So set origin to the surface. This needs to be more exact. So let me just move this sphere to the, or let me move my cursor here. Cursor to selected, and then let's select this sphere and do Shift S, selection of cursor, and then we can move it in some. So about right there. All right, so that should make it exact. And now we need to parent stuff. So let's pick our wheel and our tire, and then our rigid body wheel, and do Control P. And then pretty much the rest of this can just parent to the axle. So I'm going to pick the hanger, leaf spring, and this axle and parent it to the rigid body axle. And we'll change that later on in this section. But I think that should be good. Let's make sure everything's moving like it should. It looks like it is, but we need the other side to fully test everything. So let's mirror it. So we want to create, let's hide the front suspension. Not the rear suspension, the front suspension, and the front suspension rig. And we'll go ahead and hide this controller empty. And we want our cursor at the world origin. And we want to make a new empty to do our mirroring. So we want to select all our armatures, which we can do up here. Select all by type, armature, and then select our empty, and then parent it. And then we want to select that empty from the outliner and do select hierarchy, and then do Shift D, press escape, change the scale to -1, like that. All right, we don't have to do anything with steering, so we just want to select all of our armatures and then press Control Numpad Plus to select all its children. Just press it once. And we want to clear the parents, so press Alt-P to clear the parents. Okay. Now we can select everything that's visible and apply the scale. Object, apply, scale. And now we can select our armatures and delete them, and select our empties and delete them also. All right. Make sure to save it. And let's see if it works. We also need to, I guess, mirror this. So I'm going to do Shift D, escape, and just do -1 here. Oops, only did one of them. There we go. Okay, so just mirror that if you want, and save it, and let's see if this works. And it looks like it is, except again, one of our motors, preload motors is flipped. So let's flip that back, RY 180, and press play. And it looks like everything is working like we want it. So that's great.